In the quiet moments when the weight of the world feels unbearable, have you ever wondered if anyone is truly standing with you? Maybe you're facing a season of loneliness, anxiety gnawing at your peace, or a long, tiring wait for answers that never seem to come. If that sounds like you, then this message is meant to touch your heart deeply. You're not alone in feeling overwhelmed or forgotten. There are days when the darkness seems to close in, and the silence around you feels deafening. But here's something powerful to hold on to. In those very darkest days, God is silently fighting for you. It's hard to imagine sometimes, isn't it? When troubles pile up, when we don't hear any response or see any visible sign of help, it's easy to feel abandoned or to question if God even notices. But let me assure you, there is a divine presence working behind the scenes, even when we can't sense it. This isn't just a comforting thought. It's a truth woven throughout Scripture and lived out by countless believers through history. And that's what I want to invite you to explore with me today. So stay with me until the very end of this reflection. Together, we'll uncover how God's quiet battles are shaping your victory, even when the fight feels invisible. You'll be encouraged to trust more deeply, to embrace faith not just as a hope, but as a powerful, living force in your life. No matter where you are in your journey, whether you're just beginning to seek God's presence or you've been walking with Him for years, this message is for you. Not by accident, but by divine purpose. You are here now because God has something special to reveal. Maybe you're asking yourself, how can God be fighting for me if I can't see any signs? Why does it feel so silent? These are real questions, and you're invited to bring them honestly before God. The silence doesn't mean absence. Often, the most significant battles are waged quietly, with God orchestrating victories that we'll only fully understand in time. In the Bible, there are countless stories of people who faced overwhelming odds, yet experienced God's unseen power moving in their favor. These stories remind us that God's ways are higher than ours, and His timing is perfect, even when we can't predict it. So today we'll reflect on this profound truth and discover how it can transform your darkest days into a testimony of hope and strength. Before we dive deeper, take a moment to breathe in this truth. You are not forgotten. You are not fighting alone. And God's silent presence is your greatest ally. Let this thought settle in your heart as we journey through this reflection together. If you've ever felt weighed down by struggles that no one else understands, if you've wrestled with doubt or fear in your quiet moments, know this: God is with you, and He is fighting for you. Quietly, powerfully, faithfully. So, keep watching, keep listening, and let this message remind you that the battles you face today are not the end of your story. God is at work, even in ways you cannot see, shaping a future full of hope, peace, and victory. You were brought here for this moment, and by God's grace you will come away encouraged, renewed, and ready to embrace the day with new faith. As we move beyond that powerful truth, imagine for a moment the darkest night you've ever experienced. Picture how the sky seems endless and heavy, with no stars to guide your way and no hint of dawn in sight. That darkness can feel suffocating, a place where hope seems distant and fears take root. But just as surely as the night always gives way to morning, this dark season in your life is part of a greater story. A story where God is quietly at work behind the scenes. Like a steady lighthouse keeper tending a flame unseen by many, God's presence is constant and His strength unwavering, even when the world around you is shrouded in shadows. This quiet battle God wages for you is not always dramatic or loud. Sometimes it is a subtle shift, a gentle nudge, a protection you don't notice until much later. Think of a ship caught in a violent storm on the ocean, tossed by waves and battered by wind, struggling to stay afloat. To the crew, it feels like chaos and danger everywhere. But beneath the surface, unseen forces, currents, and the ship's strong keel are guiding it through the tempest. So it is with God's hand in your darkest days. Though you may feel adrift, He is steering you steadily, fighting the unseen battles that keep you safe and moving forward. When we grasp this truth, it changes everything. We begin to understand that faith is not just blind hope, but a firm trust in a God who works in silence and mystery. The Bible reminds us, "Those who are with us are more than those who are with them," 2 Kings 6:16. This verse carries the comforting promise that no matter how fierce the battles appear, God's presence outnumbers every challenge, every enemy, every fear. You are never alone in your fight. A divine army surrounds you, protecting and guiding you through the storm. And this promise isn't reserved for heroes in ancient stories. It's for you, right now, in your everyday struggles and hidden battles. When anxiety tries to steal your peace, or when waiting feels unbearable, know that God's silent fight is real and active. He is strengthening you in ways you can't yet see, preparing you for the breakthrough just beyond the horizon. The transformation that comes from embracing this perspective is profound. Instead of being overwhelmed by darkness, you begin to walk through it with a quiet confidence. Your faith becomes a shield, your hope a light that refuses to be extinguished. Understanding that God is fighting for you, even when you feel weakest, empowers you to face each day with courage and peace, knowing the victory is already in motion. So as you hold this image of God's silent warfare in your heart, prepare yourself to explore stories from Scripture where this divine battle is made clear through real people's lives. We'll see how God showed up when the odds were stacked against His people, offering us a blueprint for how He fights for us today. This reflection will not only strengthen your faith but also offer practical steps to live confidently, even in the darkest hours. Keep this hope alive. Let it be the anchor that holds you steady through every storm, every trial, and every silent battle you face. When we turn to the stories of those who have walked before us in faith, we find countless examples of God fighting silently yet powerfully on behalf of His people. Take David, for instance, a young shepherd boy who faced the might of King Saul's relentless pursuit. At times, David must have felt utterly alone, hiding in caves, fleeing from danger, unsure if he would survive another day. But even in those moments of fear and uncertainty, God's invisible hand was protecting him. The same God who later made David a king was already working behind the scenes, orchestrating every step to keep him safe. Perhaps you see a reflection of your own struggles in David's story, the feeling of being hunted by circumstances beyond your control, yet held by a divine promise of protection. Similarly, Daniel's experience offers another profound example. Imagine the terror of being thrown into a den of hungry lions, surrounded by silence and darkness. It was not the roar of the animals or the threat of death that saved Daniel, but God's quiet presence, a peace that no one else could perceive. This story reminds us that sometimes God's most powerful interventions are the ones we don't hear or see. Maybe you're in a situation where danger or despair feels close, yet you cannot hear a comforting word or see a clear path forward. Daniel's faith teaches us that trusting in God's silent power can be the very thing that sustains us, even in our darkest trials. Then there's Paul, who endured countless hardships, prisons, beatings, shipwrecks, yet his faith never wavered. He knew that God's strength was made perfect in weakness. Even when his surroundings were harsh and his future uncertain, Paul experienced God's sustaining grace quietly holding him up. His letters to the early churches echo this truth, encouraging believers to stand firm in faith, knowing that God is at work, even when we cannot see it. Maybe you too are in a season of struggle, feeling worn down and isolated. Like Paul, you can find strength in the assurance that God's silent fight is ongoing, sustaining you day by day. These biblical examples are not just stories of the past. They resonate deeply with what many face today. Perhaps you feel overwhelmed by fears no one else understands. Maybe you are carrying burdens that seem too heavy to bear, or you feel abandoned when prayers seem unanswered. The question that emerges then is, have I tried to give this burden to God? Have I truly believed that He is fighting on my behalf, even when I feel defeated? It's a tender but powerful invitation to surrender, to let go of control and trust the invisible battle God is waging. What does this mean for you, here and now? It means that your darkest days are not signs of God's absence, but invitations to deeper trust. It means that the silence you feel may be the space where God is moving most powerfully, preparing you for a breakthrough. And it means that even if you don't see immediate answers, the battle is not lost. It is being won, step by step, by the one who loves you most. So as you face your challenges today, remember these questions and hold on to the truth that God's fight for you is real and active. You are not alone in your struggles, and there is hope beyond the darkness. This understanding is more than comfort. It's a call to live differently, to approach each day with renewed faith, to open your heart to God's silent strength, and to walk with the assurance that no battle you face is bigger than the God who fights for you. In the midst of life's most challenging moments, faith becomes more than just a belief. It becomes a daily practice, a lifeline that sustains us through the storms. When you recognize that God is quietly fighting for you, it invites a response that goes beyond mere words. It calls you to live your faith actively, nurturing it with habits that strengthen your spirit and draw you closer to His presence every day. Prayer becomes the heartbeat of this connection, not just a ritual or a last resort, but a continuous conversation with God. Even when you don't have the right words, when your heart is heavy or confused, simply opening yourself to Him in honest dialogue is powerful. It's in those moments of vulnerability and quiet that God's peace often begins to seep in, offering comfort and strength. Reading and meditating on Scripture is another vital practice that feeds your faith and keeps your hope alive. The Bible is filled with stories, promises, and truths that remind you of God's faithfulness, even when life feels uncertain. When you immerse yourself in these words, you open a door to hearing God's voice, to sensing His presence in ways that calm your anxious thoughts. It's like finding an anchor in the storm, a steady point that holds you firm when everything else feels like it's slipping away. Gratitude, too, plays a crucial role in this journey. It might seem hard to feel thankful when you're surrounded by struggles, but choosing gratitude shifts your perspective. It opens your eyes to the blessings and small mercies that often go unnoticed. Giving thanks, even for the tiniest things, invites joy and hope to rise, creating space for God's light to break through the darkness. Gratitude is a powerful act of faith. It declares that despite the hardships, you trust God's goodness and believe that He is at work. Obedience is also a key part of walking in faith during difficult times. Sometimes God asks us to trust without understanding, to take steps forward even when the path is unclear. This kind of obedience is not always easy, but it is a profound way of showing God that we believe He is guiding us. Each act of faithfulness, each decision to follow God's leading, strengthens your spirit and deepens your trust. Lastly, don't underestimate the power of community. Walking this journey alone can be overwhelming, but sharing your struggles and victories with other believers brings encouragement and support. Fellowship with others who understand the battle and stand with you in prayer creates a spiritual strength that can carry you through the hardest days. Together, you can remind one another of God's faithfulness and celebrate the victories, big and small. Living your faith through these daily practices transforms it from a simple concept into a powerful force that carries you forward. It becomes a source of peace, courage, and hope, a way to experience God's silent fight on your behalf in tangible, life-changing ways. When you cultivate prayer, Scripture, gratitude, obedience, and community, you build a foundation that no storm can shake. This foundation will not only sustain you, but also prepare you to walk confidently into the future God has planned for you. It's natural to carry heavy burdens when life feels uncertain and our spirit grows weary. Anxiety whispers doubts in the quietest moments, waiting and patience stretch beyond what we imagine possible, and the future can seem like an uncontrollable force bearing down on us. You might wonder if your struggles are unique or if anyone else truly understands the exhaustion and fear that fill your heart. The truth is, many have walked this path before you, and it's okay to acknowledge these feelings without shame or guilt. They do not define your worth or your faith. They are part of being human. The Bible offers a balm for these deep wounds, words that reach into the core of our being to bring comfort and hope. When Jesus tells us not to worry about tomorrow in Matthew 6:34, he invites us to release the heavy weight of anxiety and trust in God's provision one day at a time. This promise is not a simple platitude, it's a lifeline for those overwhelmed by fear of the unknown. Holding on to this truth helps us breathe again, reminding us that God's care covers each moment, even those we cannot predict or control. Philippians 4:6-7 encourages us to bring every worry, every fear, and every burden to God through prayer and thanksgiving. In doing so, God's peace, beyond human understanding, guards our hearts and minds. This peace isn't dependent on our circumstances. It's a supernatural calm that settles in the soul when we hand over our troubles to the one who fights for us. The act of prayer becomes not just a moment of asking, but a transformative experience where anxiety is replaced by trust and peace. Romans 8:28 reminds us that even the hardships we face work together for our good, shaping us into the people God intends us to be. This doesn't mean that pain is easy or that suffering disappears, but it means that God is weaving every difficult thread into a tapestry of hope and redemption. When you feel like giving up, these words can be a lifeline, a reminder that your story is far from over and that your current struggles are part of a greater plan. If you are tired, worn down by spiritual battles that seem endless, know that God sees your pain and stands ready to renew your strength. It's okay to rest in Him, to allow His grace to refresh your soul when your own energy runs low. Faith isn't about never feeling weary. It's about finding refuge in God's presence and trusting that He will carry you through. You don't have to face these challenges alone. Let these scriptures be a source of comfort and guidance as you navigate anxiety, waiting, uncertainty, and exhaustion. God's silent fight is not distant. It is close, personal, and powerful, and He invites you to lean into His peace, to rest in His promises, and to rise again renewed by His love. Waiting is never easy. When the clock seems to tick slowly and the future feels uncertain, it can be tempting to question God's timing, to wonder if He has forgotten or if He is really at work. But the truth is, God's timing is different from ours, often slower than we would like, yet always perfect. Just as a master gardener patiently tends a seed beneath the soil, unseen growth is taking place inside you, even when nothing appears to be changing. The stories of Abraham, Joseph, and the people of Israel reveal this truth in vivid ways, showing us that waiting is not wasted time, but a vital season of preparation. Abraham waited decades for the promise of a child, enduring years of doubt and hope intertwined. Yet, in that waiting, God was shaping his faith and character, teaching him to trust beyond what he could see. Joseph, betrayed and imprisoned, waited years before rising to a position of influence in Egypt. Through his long wait, God was not absent, but weaving a plan that would save many lives. The Israelites wandered in the desert for 40 years, a time of testing and transformation, where God's presence sustained them even when the path was unclear. This pattern of waiting, trust, and transformation invites us to see our own seasons differently. Waiting is not passive resignation. It's an active hope, a patient endurance fueled by faith. While we wait, God is working in ways we cannot fully understand, molding our hearts, strengthening our spirits, and setting the stage for breakthroughs. Even when the silence feels heavy, it is filled with purpose. Hope anchors us in this truth. The hope that God's promises are true and that His plans for us are good, even if the timing is mysterious. The hope that we are not standing still, but being prepared for something greater. When you find yourself growing impatient or discouraged, remember that this season is part of your story's unfolding, and God is faithful to bring it to completion. As you wait, hold on to hope, stay connected to God, and act with faith in the small steps you can take. Trust that what God is doing inside you and around you is alive and powerful, even if it is hidden. Your patience is not in vain. It is a testimony of trust in the one who fights silently and wins ultimately. So in your waiting, do not lose heart. Instead, Let your soul find peace in God's perfect timing, knowing that He is working all things together for your good. Prayer is the lifeline that connects us intimately to God, especially in those moments when the battles feel invisible and the silence overwhelming. It's more than just words spoken into the air. Prayer is a heartfelt dialogue, a sacred conversation between your soul and the Creator. When you pray, you open yourself to God, not just to present your needs and fears, but to listen, to rest in His presence, and to be transformed by His peace. Prayer is a refuge, a sanctuary where the noise of the world fades and you can find strength and renewal. This ongoing conversation with God doesn't require perfect language or eloquence. Sometimes it's simply a whisper of hope, a cry for help, or even silence filled with trust. The Bible invites us to come boldly to the throne of grace, knowing that God hears every sincere word. This relationship, nurtured through prayer, becomes the foundation that sustains you in your darkest days. It reminds you that you are not fighting alone, that the God who battles for you is close and attentive. Keeping a prayer journal can be a powerful way to deepen this connection. Writing down your prayers, your struggles, and the ways God answers, even in subtle or unexpected ways, helps you track your spiritual journey. It becomes a record of faith, a testimony of God's faithfulness that you can return to whenever doubts arise or the fight feels too hard. This practice encourages persistence and gratitude, reinforcing your trust that God is at work even when you can't see it immediately. Prayer is not only a personal experience, it is also a communal one. Jesus reminds us that where 2 or 3 are gathered in His name, He is there among them. Sharing your burdens with fellow believers and joining together in prayer creates a spiritual bond that strengthens and encourages. In community, prayer becomes a source of mutual support, a reminder that God's silent fight extends beyond you to all who believe. Gratitude within prayer shifts your heart from focusing on what's missing to celebrating what God has already done. Thanking God for His presence, for the small victories, for His love, even amid trials, opens your spirit to peace and joy. This gratefulness transforms prayer from a plea into a celebration of God's ongoing work in your life. Through a life of deep, constant prayer, you cultivate a faith that is resilient and vibrant. It is a faith that embraces God's silent fight with confidence, knowing that every whispered prayer is heard and every silent struggle is met with divine strength. This prayerful life is not a burden but a gift, a continuous source of peace, hope, and power that carries you through even the darkest days. As we come to the close of this reflection, let's take a moment to gently gather the truths we've explored. Even in your darkest days, when silence feels overwhelming and the fight invisible, God is silently, powerfully, and faithfully fighting for you. This isn't a distant promise, but a present reality, one that invites you to live with hope, trust, and courage. You've seen through the stories of David, Daniel, and Paul that God's presence in our struggles is steadfast and real. Their lives mirror yours in the challenges faced and the quiet victories won. They teach us that faith is not about avoiding darkness, but about walking through it with confidence that God's light is leading the way. Remember the daily practices that nurture this faith: prayer that becomes a lifeline, meditation on Scripture that renews your hope, gratitude that shifts your perspective, obedience that strengthens your trust, and community that uplifts your soul. These are not just good habits, but powerful tools that transform your faith from an idea into a living, breathing reality. The challenges you face, anxiety, waiting, uncertainty, exhaustion, are not signs of failure but invitations to lean deeper into God's grace. Scriptures like Matthew 6:34, Philippians 4:6-7, and Romans 8:28 offer comfort and strength, reminding you that God's peace surpasses all understanding and that He is working all things together for your good. Trusting in God's perfect timing, like Abraham, Joseph, and the Israelites, teaches patience rooted in hope. Waiting is not wasted time. It's preparation for the breakthroughs God is orchestrating. And through constant, heartfelt prayer, both personal and communal, You cultivate a relationship with God that sustains you, empowers you, and carries you through every silent battle. So today I invite you to take these truths to heart. Begin or continue your journey with God's quiet strength by practicing daily prayer, immersing yourself in His Word, embracing gratitude, obeying in faith, and connecting with a community of believers. You are not alone. God's silent fight is ongoing, and His victory is certain. May you walk forward with renewed faith, peace in your heart, and a spirit strengthened by the assurance that God is with you, fighting for you, always. Let this promise be your anchor through every storm and your light in every dark night. As the Apostle Paul reminds us, we are more than conquerors through Him who loved us. Romans 8:37. Hold on to this truth. Your darkest days are not the end, but the beginning of a testimony of God's unfailing love and power in your life. Thank you for joining me in this reflection. May God bless you richly and fill your heart with His peace today and always.